Okay, welcome back. Hello again, everybody. So it's me again here with Alyssa White, and we're doing another series of reviews.
We
And
are.
yeah, it's kind of exciting. And I feel so. These are another pair of films that you hadn't watched yet.
That's correct. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
exposing me to a lot of new films.
yeah, yeah. It's excellent. Yeah. So both of these films we're doing are directed by Peter Bogdanovich, and he is a really interesting guy. Unfortunately, he passed away recently, but this is
Yes.
a good thing to kind of watch some of his films and talk about him. So he was like a film critic and essayist and some other stuff. He's like just a general film lover, and he's kind of well known because he was very good friends with Orson Welles. They were like very chummy. They hung out a lot. There's a lot of interviews they did together. I remember just seeing on Twitter recently, like you could just see them hanging out in grocery stores and stuff. Like they did a lot together, which is
I
really
actually
cool.
didn't know that, so that's interesting.
They were very good friends, very good friends. I think Bogdanovich really like sort of looked up to him and like really aspired to be like sort of have a similar career. I
Hmm.
know that Bogdanovich, like he talked about like there's this famous thing that like Orson Welles directed his first feature film at like 26 or something.
Oh yes. Citizen
Yeah.
Kane. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did I blank on that name for a second there?
Yeah, he did Citizen Kane at like 26, and it's considered basically the greatest film of all time. And so Bogdanovich was like, "Oh, I have to make my first film before I'm 26, or I won't be like Orson Welles." Like he literally said that. So, it kind of a high standard to live up to. I mean, even Wells himself kind of said that he basically made the best film of all time, and then it just went downhill from there. He said they didn't like F
Yeah.
for fake, but anyway, yeah. And so he's been Bogdanovich has been like just like a big sort of a voice for film and film history and film preservation, and also as these films we're going to talk about, he's a great filmmaker.
He is.
So, yeah, Alyssa. So, like, were you familiar with his work before, or had you seen any of his films or heard anything about him?
I had not seen any of his films prior to this. Maybe I
Yeah,
could speak. But I had definitely heard of Paper Moon and Last Picture Show. I know that Pam O'Neill was the youngest person ever to win Best Actress or Best Supporting Actress for Paper Moon, and Cloris Leachman won Best Supporting Actress for Last Picture Show. So I knew both had Oscar credentials.
yeah.
I knew a little bit about Peter Bogdanovich's life, about how he was married to Polly Platt, who is a costume designer on both films, but then he left her for Sybil Shepherd, and they dated for 8 years. Which she was gorgeous, by the way, in Last Picture Show. I just have to say that.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, yeah, I mean, interesting life, interesting man, and both of these films I thought were great. And I'm like, why didn't I see these sooner?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And they're both. I feel like he did them one after the other. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Last Picture Show was 71 and Paper Moon was 73.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Hmm.
2 years apart. But I
Hmm.
mean, I'm sure he shot them very close together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, we'll get into some of the stories of it. But like, he had been kind of like he did one movie. I forget, it was like Hard Targets or something like that. Was one of the first movies he did.
Wasn't the film prior to Last Picture Show that kind of made a name for him? Wasn't that What's Up, Doc?
I forget if What's Up Doc came before or
I could be
after.
mistaken about when it came out, but
Let me check real quick. What's Up Doc was 72.
okay, so in
So
between.
that was in between, yeah. Yeah.
He was a
The
busy man.
yeah. Last Picture Show kind of like catapulted him into being
Yeah.
a director that could, consistently work at that time period. But yeah, before that, I believe he made a film which was about like some basically mass shooter is the way we would put it.
Okay.
Um, and I remember I saw this documentary about it where so they make this film and they just it's just like they thought it was an interesting idea and compelling. And then there was this actual shooting that happened in Texas where someone was in a clock tower and they were like shooting people.
Oh, yeah, I
Um,
remember that.
and then that movie basically got like almost like banned, I think. They just, no one would show it. And so he was like, oh my God, my career's over. Before Last Picture Show. And then he kind of had a resurgence. But yeah, I mean, you know, he was, you know, kind of in a rut a bit before Last Picture Show. But you know, he kept at it and, you know, made some very good films. I mean, he's super talented, and, you know, the acting, especially in these films, is like pretty,
it's incredible.
Yeah.
And I mean, both movies had actresses win Best Supporting Actress, so
yeah,
that tells you something.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. It does, totally. Cool. So yeah, why don't we start? Let's talk about Paper Moon. So we'll, you know, begin with that film. This is an interesting one. So it's like a road movie.
Yeah.
It's kind of a comedy, but it takes place during the Depression. So it's like the 30s, like 1935.
Yeah.
And yeah, the film, so it sort of starts with Addie, and she's at her mom's funeral. And then Moses, this guy Moses Prey. I mean, I'm sure
that's definitely not his actual name.
Who knows what his name is, right? Like, he probably doesn't even remember at this point. He's been through so many. So he shows up, and like we immediately know that he's kind of like sketchy, right? So like he shows up, and then he's late. He steals someone else's flowers from another grave to bring, like, oh, I have flowers for this funeral. And then you know, he's just like, you know, he says whatever, leaves the flowers. And you know, the other lady was like, oh, you look just like Addie, like you have a strong resemblance to her. And he's like, oh, well, no, it's like I'm not her dad.
Yeah.
So he kind of like, and it's not like she's, you know, like a year old. Like she's about
10. I think Tam O'Neill was 10 when she filmed it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the character's around that same age.
Yeah, something.
They do look alike because they are actually father and daughter in real life, Ryan and Tatum O'Neill.
Yeah. And, you know, like, so this guy's already been out of what's probably his child's life for a decade, maybe more. And so it's like, wow, this dude is like pretty sketchy. From the
family, jump. They ask him, how did you know? I forget the mother's name. They just said like one time, I think. And he's like, oh, we met at a, I think, charity meeting or something. And then and then they're like, oh, can you take Addie to her aunt in New Orleans? He's like, sure, I'll drive her.
Yeah.
Or just let the kid go off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's like they're going to Missouri. It's like,
oh, Missouri, no, not New Orleans. It's Missouri.
Like Saint Joseph, Missouri. And they're in Kansas. So
because I remember they pronounced St. Louis St. Louis.
Yeah, St. Louis.
Why did I have New Orleans in my mind?
Well, New Orleans is a beautiful place, so maybe
I don't know why.
I mean, New Orleans is nicer than middle of nowhere, Missouri. I mean, that's for sure. Yeah, and then he agrees to do this, you know, take her to Missouri. But before he does that, so their mother was killed in an accident. Well, her mother was killed in an accident by some guy. And so then Moses, or Mose, as he goes by, he convinces the brother of the guy who killed her to give him $200. And, you know, basically saying, oh yeah, well, I have to take care of her, so give me the money. He gives him the money, and he immediately spends a bunch of the money on himself, basically.
Yeah.
You know, he like fixes his car and he does all this other stuff. But, you know, Addie, being like the very kind of precocious and intelligent person that she is, she overhears this. And, you know, he's basically was trying to like get rid of her. He's going to put her on a train with $25. Oh, I think my internet's bad.
Oh no. I passed the curse on to you. Oh no.
No, it's okay. At least your internet's good. So that's a plus.
Hopefully, knock on wood.
I know, right? Yeah. So he was like thinking he was going to pass her off with like $25, putting on her train and just be like, bye-bye.
Yeah.
But she's like, no, you got $200. Yeah.
She knows he has $200, and they're in a diner, and he's like, have a coney and a knee high. Coney Island in Lehigh, but she's just in there going, "I want my $200," and she keeps screaming it louder and louder and louder.
Yeah, yeah, and she's like, again, she's really smart about this whole thing. She knows, like, I can get him over a barrel because he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to. He wants the money, and he wants to like do the thing to get the money and not like cause a scene and get found out because you know that's the problem for him is getting found out in the situation. So he's like, okay, fine, I'll get you the money, and I'll take you myself. And he then has to go, and he's like, you know, he's kind of like defeated, and he goes to the basically the clerk who's at the train station. He's like, okay, send another telegram to these people saying that I'm going to send her myself and she won't be on the train, and there won't be as much money or something like that.
And they asked her a refund for the ticket.
Yeah.
Also in the diner, Addie keeps telling him, "You're my pa. You were in a bar room with my mom."
Yeah.
I am not your pa.
Yeah, it's like, so what if I was in a bar room? That doesn't make me your pa. Like, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, man, his character is so like, oh my god. Like, from the beginning, he's just the worst, but in a comedic way, you know.
And then he goes on his little scam thing he does, which Addie sees. Yeah. And he goes around to people's houses. He looks at obituaries and finds people that have recently died and goes to their houses. It's usually men that died. Goes to their houses with these Bibles that have the wife's name on them.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, is so-and-so here?" And the wife will be like, "No, he passed away." And he'll be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. He ordered this Bible from me a few weeks ago and told me to give it to a woman named Pearl." And she'd be like, "I'm Pearl." He's like, "Well, he put down a $1 deposit and this is an $8 Bible." So he's like, "You don't have to accept it, but if you want it, it'll be $7. And the wife would always be like, "Okay, yeah, he got it for me. He meant for me to have it," which the husband never bought that.
Exactly.
Like, Addie sees in the back of the car, he has a little stamp thing to put the names on the Bibles, and then they're just regular Bibles. They're not anything special.
Yeah, it's nothing special. And so, and that's like one of the scams that he does. And it's all just like, it's all right there in plain view what he's doing. He even like circled on the newspaper like the name of the person and their address. Oh man, he's so bad. And but then she kind of gets wise to it, and she decides to kind of join in with him on it.
And she does it when they're at the sheriff's house.
Yeah.
Because the sheriff's like, "How much is the Bible?" And she's like, $10.
Yeah. She kind of goes up on the price. Yeah, because like he shows up at a second place, and because he expects again that it's just the wife is there and no one else is there. Mm-hmm. And then the sheriff walks out. He's like, "Oh, like, well, you don't have to do it, you know." And he's like trying to back out of it. But you know, Addie like jumps in, basically saves him in that situation.
Yeah, she says something about, "Dad, we need to go to church to pray for Mom. She's in the hospital sick." And the sheriff takes pity on them. It's like, "Okay, how much is the Bible?" And she's like, $10.
Yeah. And she even like there's a second situation they get into where this was like it was funny but sad. Yeah. Like, so they go to this lady. Well, so there's a second one where it's like a poor lady who, remember, like the lady who has, so she comes up and she's like holding a kid.
She's got 8 kids. I counted.
And they're all girls too. They're all girls, by the way, I believe. Yeah, she's holding 2 kids. She's like holding a kid, and she's got another kid in her arms, and he's talking to her. And then like you see 2 kids come out from the back, and you see another 3 kids come out, and it's just like there's like 8 kids. And Addie's like, "Oh, no, the Bible's free. You can have it."
Yeah.
He already paid for it. Because she's like, "Okay, we should stay out of this situation and not, you know, not scam them. She's by herself and she's got 8 kids. We can't be taking their money. That's wrong." But then, the next one is
the rich lady.
Yeah.
And Addie can tell she's rich. So when the lady asks for how much the Bible costs, she's like, $24.
$24. Yeah.
I actually saw a comment on Letterboxd that they did the math and they said today $24 would be $420.
Yeah.
And then the woman's like, "You're so cute." I'll add $5 to that. So she paid her $29 for a Bible.
That's a lot of money. And again, this is the Depression, and like this is what's so interesting about this film is like it's doing all this stuff in like a funny way. But it's doing a really good job of like showing what this did to people. And a lot of these were like kind of realistic scams that people would do. I mean, there's been stuff like this throughout, but the Depression really kind of underscored like how desperate people were for anything. And again, like while they're driving around, there's all these people that they see on the road. And especially like in the early part of the film, like you see people that are just people whose cars like, stop working and they're stuck. And I remember at one point, Addie's like, "Oh, we should help them." And he's like, no, we can't. There's nothing we can do for them. And you can just see that, the Dust Bowl, the poverty, all this stuff is like really affecting people. So it's really interesting in how it does that, but it doesn't linger on it. And it gets us right back to laughing at these crazy, absurd scenarios.
Yeah.
So then the next sort of part of their adventure, Mose meets this woman,
Trixie Delight.
Miss Trixie Delight, who's an exotic dancer, which is interesting. Yeah, and he becomes like kind of enthralled with her. He's just like, oh man, he's doing all these things for her, and buying her clothes. He like, she's like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if you got this new car? Blah 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 blah. And at some point, he then gets a new car, to appease her, and yeah, I mean the two of them are kind of stuck together, and Addie is not having it. She was not happy.
No, and Trixie doesn't like Addie. Addie doesn't like Trixie, but Addie has back then. I mean, I'm trying to think of the right word to use. Today would be like an assistant.
Yeah. She
back
has
then
a maid or a helper.
Yeah.
Trixie, who also does not like Trixie. She doesn't like her.
Yeah,
yeah. Remember, doesn't she says like, oh yeah, she said that I was going to get paid $5 a week. I haven't been paid anything.
No. And then he's like, how old are you? She's like 15. She's like, how old are you? I think she says 10 or so.
Yeah. Yeah, and so Addie's like, man, I want out of this situation. And so they come to this hotel. And again, at this hotel, they're spending a bunch of money.
Yeah, you can tell it's a fancy hotel.
Yeah. So Addie has this kind of scheme in mind where she's like, okay, so what I'm gonna do is have Mose find out that Trixie is like sleeping with some other guy, and then he'll be so mad that he's just gonna walk off. So they, Addie sees that the front desk attendant guy, he's like really into her. So they have this scheme where they're like, okay, so we're gonna ask Trixie if she'll like do a trick for like $25. And she's like, at first she's mad, but then she's like, yeah, I'll do it. And so then basically they get the attendant to go up and meet her, expecting that he's gonna get laid basically. And they do this whole thing, so they have to have Mose like not talk to her that whole day,
which was so funny because he's like, is she sick? They're like, oh, it's just her lady's time, and you can just see his face like, ugh.
Yeah. He's like, okay, yeah, I'll stay away. I'm gonna go do some other stuff. Yeah. So he's like, like Addie tells him that at breakfast, and he's like eating some waffles and drinking coffee, and he's like doing whatever. And then they tell the attendant, and he's like, oh yeah, she was sure fixing to like you, blah blah blah. And he's like, okay, I'm coming right up.
He just like runs up the stairs.
Yeah, and so then they're like, they go in the room and they're doing their thing or whatever. And then Addie's like trying to find Mose, and he's like, where is he? And he's like, not there. He's not at the breakfast room. She can't find him anywhere, and she's like, oh man, I screwed up this situation. But then he was like, she finds him, he's just about to leave, and she's like, oh, Mose, you gotta go. She's like sick or something. You gotta talk to her like right away. Something's wrong.
Yeah, she's like, don't knock, just use the key and open the door.
Yeah, don't knock. That was so funny. Yeah, and so then he barges in, and next thing we see is Mo's like, we're leaving, we're out, time to go. And the next time they're on the road, he's like, how could a woman do that? How could she betray me like that?
And he's like, she did it before. And he's like, how many times? A lot. And he's like, why didn't you tell me? And she's like, you wouldn't have believed me.
Yeah. It's so funny. So yeah, she's like playing him now after he's been playing all these different people. Again, it's really funny that this guy is mad because like he is the consummate con artist, right? He's always looking for the next grift. So it's funny that he wouldn't realize that he's, a part of some other grift himself. But anyway, so then the next part of their journey, they're staying at a hotel, and they see this guy who's sort of it's like the equivalent today would be like the guy who's selling weed or something on the corner. I mean, that's basically what it was, to be honest.
Yeah.
So he's selling some bootleg whiskey, and Addie tells Mose, and Mose is like, oh, he must have a stash around here somewhere, and it's like, just follow him and then tell me where he goes. So she follows him, and she sees him do this transaction, and so she tells Mose like where the stuff is being hid. So then he goes there, he steals this bootlegger's whiskey, and then he meets with this guy, and he's like, hey, so I have a whole bunch of whiskey, would you want to buy some from me? And they come to a price. And so basically Mose's idea is, let me sell back the whiskey to this guy who's a bootlegger. Okay, I wonder what could go wrong here. So they go in the middle of nowhere, and they do this little deal, and he gets like $625 for all of this whiskey that this guy, his own stuff, which is a lot of money. I mean, if what was it, $400 was $20,
yeah,
$600 is like you could buy half the state of California or something. So they have all this money, and they're as they're trying to leave, Mose can tell they're being trailed. And so they're being trailed by like the sheriff, and the sheriff is like, "Oh, well, I heard that you did a deal. You're a bootlegger. Like, you've been selling some whiskey." He's like, "Oh no, I don't know what you're talking about." It's like, "Well, we have to take you in anyway." So they take him in, and basically what we find out is that the reason why this guy is able to sell the whiskey is that his brother is the sheriff.
Yeah.
So he's now ripped off the brother of a sheriff of this town. So he's in a lot of trouble. And then there's this I really like this scene when they're like at the police station. I thought this was really well done. Because the whole time we're like, where's the money?
Yeah.
And we think that it's hidden her. So like Addie, the whole time, she has this little box that has all these
little cigar box. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a lot of her, I guess, trinkets or things like that, things that she kept, heirlooms or whatever. And the guy's like, the sheriff is like taking it apart. He rips it open, dumps it out. There's a secret compartment. He opens the secret compartment. Nothing's there. Addie had this little toy where you like, I forget what you call it, like a.
I forget what they're called, but like you hold them and it's got like a little metal ball and it goes between the different little holders and you try to get to the bottom without it falling off the thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he's got that. He breaks that open. Can't find the money, and then Addie's like to him, to Mose, and so the money is in her hat, not like under her hat, but like hid inside of her hat.
Which the sheriff then like turns around. She's acting normal. He yanks the hat off her head, but he turns it inside out, thinking she's got it hid underneath it. Can't find it. He gets frustrated, and he leaves. And the assistant is there. She says, "Can I get my stuff back, sir?" He's like, "Sure, go ahead." gets her hat, which has the money in it, puts the stuff back in the cigar box, and then she sits down, and she's like, these exact words. She's like, "I gotta use the shitter."
Yeah.
He's like down the hall. And she's like, "Can my pa come with me? I get scared being alone."
Yeah.
So he's like, "Yeah, I'll come with, but I've gotta come with you too." So they go down the hall, and as soon as they reach the bathroom, she goes, "Run!"
Yeah.
So they run
Yeah.
and escape the police, or
Yeah.
not really, because then they get trailed, and they're trying to find another vehicle.
Yeah.
And they come across this place that has a rundown truck that doesn't have any. It's missing one door, and when they open the other door, it falls off.
Yeah.
And the guy's there like, "Oh, we don't want your car. We don't want to swap." And Mose is like, "Okay, we get a wrestling match. If I win, I get your truck. If you win, you get to keep both vehicles." Well, she wins, but then the truck is a piece of crap.
Yeah, the truck sucks. The brakes don't work. Like we get into this situation where like I think Mose was like pushing it.
He's pushing it, and he tells Addie, "Press the brakes." She's like, "They don't work."
They don't work. Yeah. Yeah. And so he's got to run after this car because, doesn't work. Yeah. And so then they finally get into Missouri. They get into that town and they're like, "Oh yeah, let's do some more scams or whatever." I think they had some scam in mind. They were going to meet with some guy and do something. I forget exactly what the scam was on that one.
I don't remember that either, and I just watched it last week.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I forget exactly what it was, but anyway, they were going to keep scamming, but unfortunately, the sheriff and his boys like basically, it was either they followed them or like the people that they swapped with told them where they went. Something like that happened, and Mose gets found, and he gets like basically jumped by these 3 or 4 guys, and he loses all of his money. He's beaten up, and then he's like, "Addie, this is it. It's over. Like we got nothing." But she's like, "No. I don't want to go. I don't want to leave you. We can keep doing. We can do stuff. We can blah blah blah." He's like, "No, this is the end of it." And so he takes him to, was it like Addie's aunt's house, something like that? Yeah, the aunt, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you, blah blah blah," and it's like, "Oh, you're gonna sleep in this room with your cousin, blah 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 blah," and Addie's like, "No, I don't want
Nope.
this life. I don't want this life. I don't want this boring life." So then she comes running. Yeah,
and then Mose had pulled out the picture she had given him because they had went to a carnival earlier, and she had wanted to take a picture with them on this paper moon, but he was like, no, I'm not doing that. So she does it herself, and she'd given him a picture and wrote on it, "To Mose from Addie," and he's just looking at it, and then she comes running back to him.
Yeah. And even then, he's still like, "I said I didn't want you." But then she's like, "You owe me $200.
Yeah.
He's like, "Okay." And then he throws her stuff on and then drives the car, and she has to run and jump onto the car with him. Yeah. And that's it's the end of the film. Yeah. So, yeah. Any thoughts, feelings, reactions on this film?
I thought it was really endearing. And even though they are, scammers, you do like kind of root for them. And it's just nice to see Ryan and Tam O'Neill play father and daughter, being father and daughter. I know they had a contentious relationship after the movie, but it was also just like you see Addie smoking cigarettes in the movie, which she's 10, and like he's just giving them to her. Like,
yeah, he does say like, aren't you too young to smoke? Blah blah blah. Yeah, stuff like that. It's really cute, and like even there's a whole bunch of stuff where. This is a great scene where like she has a picture of her mom. It's her and her mom, and she's kind of like wants to be like her mom. She's like posing like her mom in a mirror and stuff. But then she's like kind of mad because she doesn't like they're at a barbershop and the barber's like, "Hey, come here, son. Like you can get a haircut too." She's like, "I'm not a boy."
That's another thing. Like she keeps getting mistaken for being a boy because her hair is very short. Yeah. And Mose is like, "We need to get you some dresses and some ribbons for your hair. Then people know you're a girl." So they go and buy her. They don't buy her dresses. They steal the dress, technically.
Yeah.
And then again, they steal the ribbons because they trick the lady into giving them more money than they pay.
Yeah, it's called a quick change scam. So like they
Yeah.
would so he gave the woman like a 5 and a 20 with change for a 5
Hmm.
in ones. And then Addie gives her like a 5. He's like, "Oh, I gave you a 20." It's like you didn't give me 20, you gave me a 5. No, I gave you a 20. Like it says from Auntie Ruth on it.
Yeah.
And then they look in the thing, it's like, and the 20 says from Auntie Ruth.
Give her money back.
Yeah, give her money back. And give her like a piece of candy.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah, that was another scam they did. Yeah, so she like, I don't know, she's really cute. Like I said, it's very enduring, this film. I also liked like the way that they depicted the era. I think it did a good job of that. Because yeah, this is like, I can think of a few films that kind of really tackle this era well. This is definitely one of them. Another one that comes to my mind is They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Which is like the ultimate depression era film. But this is like a take on it where you're gonna leave happy, but still kind of get the pathos of the time. Yeah. And again, the performances are great. Very fun. I mean, Randy Quaid, he's like the guy that Ryan O'Neal fights, which is kind of fun. He's one of the hillbillies. It's like, yeah, I'll rescue you, boy. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot to like about this film. It's like, this is a very fun kind of movie.
It is, yeah, and it's far more wholesome, I would say, than the Last Picture Show was. More appropriate to watch with a family.
Yeah.
If you wanted to.
Yeah.
This is my personal favorite out of the two. I did watch this first though, so that could contribute to it. But I just thought it was so cute. And even though it is set during the Depression, and there are some scenes that, kind of make you think and make you sympathize, just seeing these two characters bond over this journey, it's funny, it's cute. It ultimately makes you feel good just watching this movie.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot to like. It's really a well done film. Very well made. Well shot. Both of these films are in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it was a good choice for both films.
Yeah, it works really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think we both like that film, so that's good.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, and so the second film we'll talk about. So now, The Last Picture Show, and yeah, as I was saying, this was like kind of one of the first big films for him that really kind of pushed him into mainstream sort of success. And I believe the story was like he was at some kind of like basically like a grocery store, and he saw the, like, how they have those racks with like the paperbacks on it.
Mm-hmm.
He saw the Last Picture Show novel on a rack, and he was just like, "Oh, I'll pick it up." And then read the book. It's like, "Oh, this could be a movie," and it became a movie.
Which Paper Moon was also based on a book, which I did not realize until I watched the movie, and it said based on the book Addie Prey.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, they're both very good adaptations. Very good. Yeah, so this is like kind of a coming of age movie, and it's about this small town in Texas. Was it Rennie? I don't know. Anarene, yeah.
I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, it's like it was an oil town, but the oil's kind of drying up, and so the town's kind of running out of. People are leaving, and there's just not a lot.
Yeah, a bunch of businesses say now closed. People are like, let's go to this place. Oh, it's closed.
Yeah. So the prospects are kind of fading, and it's about these two. Basically, it's about these two guys, Sonny and Dwayne, who are high school seniors. And I forget, there's some kind of pretext about like there was a football game that they lost really badly.
Yeah.
They lost, and everyone's mad about this football game. Which is another really like, so like, they're already off the bat, they're like sad. They're like, okay, we lost this football game, man. This sucks. And they're like, they're out playing pool or whatever. And then the first thing that really kind of comes up is like, so Sunny is really infatuated with this girl JC, who's like the pretty rich girl basically
Yeah.
in town. But at that time she was, so they're watching this movie, and Dwayne is like out on a date with JC, and Sunny's like, oh man, I really want to get with her. But he's dating another girl, and they've been together for a year at this point.
Yeah.
And then he, there's some more sexual stuff. Like they like get in the car and they're making out, and she's like half naked or whatever.
And this movie is not afraid to show nudity.
Yeah, not at all. You're gonna see a lot of it.
Both men and women.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's one scene that's like lots of nudity. And so, then he's like, okay, whatever, I'm just gonna break up with you because, like, and there was even like there's a scene like when they're making out in the movie theater, Sunny is like making out with her, but he's looking at the screen and he's looking at Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah.
So he's like making out with her, but he's imagining Elizabeth Taylor. So he's already wandering, as it were. And so, yeah, he breaks off with her in hopes of getting with JC. So he does that. And then there's this sort of like Christmas party or something like that that's happening. And at this Christmas party, JC is there with Dwayne. But then this other boy is like, hey, you want to come to this, was it this like a skinny dipping party or something?
Yeah. And JC agrees to, JC's mom knows the boy. And she's like, you need to go to that. Don't stay with Dwayne. Go to that party with, I forget the guy's name, but
it's like Bobby or something like that, I think. Maybe.
Yeah, Bobby or something.
Yeah, Bobby Sheen, I believe it is. So he's like another rich kid, basically. But I think he's older. He's probably older. He's probably like, over 18. And so then she dumps Dwayne. Is like, okay, sorry, I gotta go to this other party. And Dwayne's like hella mad. And meanwhile, so Sunny kind of gets into this situation with the coach's, like his coach's wife, Ruth, who's like 40. I think she just turned 40. And yeah, I mean, they kind of start an affair basically.
And they think no one knows, but everyone in town has figured it out.
Yeah. Does the coach know? I feel like he's the one guy who doesn't know.
I don't think the coach knows, but even Sunny's mom knows about it, and JC's mom knows about it.
Yeah, it's everybody knows, like, immediately. Yeah. They're like, oh, you're having an affair with Ruth.
With Ruth Popper. He's like, what? How do you know?
And they're like, it's a small town. Of course everybody knows. Yeah, I just find that funny. Like, but the coach never seems to know, but everyone else knows. Everyone else knows. So yeah, like you were talking about. So JC goes to the skinny dipping party, and they're like, oh yeah, so if it's your first time, you have to undress on the diving board in front of everybody. So she's like, okay. Because
everyone else is already naked.
Yeah, everyone else is naked, including like some younger, like the Bobby's younger brother, who's naked. Anyway, it's full nudity, all nudity. Everyone's naked. And she's like kind of struggling to do it. But yeah, eventually she gets naked and she jumps in and like, so another part of this was like, so Dwayne had given her this watch, like as a sort of like a gift.
Yeah, and then she jumps in the pool with it on, and it doesn't work anymore. She
destroys it, yeah, immediately.
and she's like, oh well.
Yeah. She looks at Bobby. She's like, she's like listening to like, doesn't work anymore. Oh well. Because yeah, she wants to get with Bobby. Like that's the only thing that she cares about.
Yeah, but then he tells her he won't be with her since she's a virgin. He's like, come back when you're no longer a virgin.
Yeah, that becomes a big thing, and so then she decides to get back with Dwayne and like hook up with Dwayne, in order to lose her virginity, so that then she could get with Bobby. Because again, all she cares about is being with Bobby. But Dwayne couldn't perform the first time.
And then she breaks up with him again. She says he's the worst man she's ever met. She hates him. I'm like, that's kind of an overreaction, but okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, teenagers. The thing that was really funny in that was like, so he can't perform, and then her two friends come in like, oh my god, what was it like?
She's like, I can't describe it in words.
Yeah, I can't describe it in words. Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah. Yeah, and then she gets into the situation with like, what is it? It's like her someone that works for her dad or something like that.
Yeah, I forget what his name was,
Yeah, I
but
forget too, but he's much older.
mm-hmm.
But she basically comes on to him like big time, and she's like, "Oh, I'd love to be able to go to the pool hall, like, but I guess they don't allow women in or something." And he's like, "Oh, I'll take you over there," and he takes her there and basically has sex with her there on a pool table. And then he's very like, there's no bedside manner with this guy. He's like, okay, he takes her home. He's like, okay, get out of the car, go away, go home. They'll talk to me. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's how she lost her virginity. I think it sort of feels like I forget if she had sex with someone else before.
No, but she finally slept with Dwayne just to get it out of the way, and then he's like, yay, and she's like, okay, this is awful. And then she gets with this guy, which he has a weird name, but I can't remember what his name was. It was weird though.
Yeah.
And I feel like this experience kind of traumatized her because she starts crying to her mom about him.
Yeah. It's pretty rough. It's a pretty rough thing to have happen to her. Yeah, but she did succeed in what she wanted, which was to lose her virginity so she can try and get with Bobby, basically. So yeah, meanwhile, so like Sonny and Dwayne, so it was like New Year's, so they decide to go on a trip to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And before they go on the trip, they're talking to, what's this guy, Sam the Lion is his name?
Yeah, Sam the Lion.
Who's like kind of the local, I don't know, he's like he owns a lot of the town that's still open. Mm-hmm. So he owned the there's like a cafe, he owns that. He owns the one movie theater. He owned, so let's see, cafe, movie theater, pool house. Yeah, he owns those three places. And he just like tells him a story about when he was young and he would go skinny dipping with this one girl. And he's like, oh yeah, I wish I could go with you guys, but I just don't have it in me anymore. He's like, good luck, take care. So they take off. And when they come back, they're all messed up, and Dwayne's like, oh, my stomach hurts, I need some Pepto-Bismol. He's like, oh, you took it all. It's like, or whatever. It's like, oh, okay. And then when they get home, they're like, oh yeah, Sam died. He had a stroke.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, and he left all his properties and some money to basically all the different certain people in town. Like, he left the theater to the woman who ran concessions. He left the cafe to like the one stewardess there, Genevieve. Mm-hmm. He left $1,000 to the preacher's son, and he left the pool hall to Sonny. So that was like his last thing that he did, and so he basically was kind of like trying to have the town keep what was left of itself,
mm-hmm.
so that it would kind of continue on. And so then they kind of like, especially Sonny, kind of like has this something that's kind of keeping him there in a way. Whereas Dwayne, like, after things go bad with Dwayne and JC, he decides to go off, join the army or something.
Yeah.
And we kind of don't see him for a while in the movie. Like, he's kind of gone. And so then it becomes more about like Sonny and JC, and as well as Sonny and his affair with what's her name? With Ruth
Pupper. Yeah.
Which is nice. I really kind of like those scenes. I mean, you always know it's gonna go bad.
Yeah.
It always goes like, I don't. Anyway, it's just like whenever it's like a guy who's that young, and any person who's that young, it usually goes bad, especially with a guy. So, but like those scenes are really good. I really like them. They're very sweet. Like I forget the name of I think she won an Oscar for this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Cloris Leachman.
Yeah, Cloris Leachman. I think she died this year.
I think it was last
maybe-
year, or the year before.
Yeah. Anyway, she's an excellent actor. She's like nominated for like 22 Emmys.
Yeah,
She's a great actress. Great actress, and she's excellent in this.
and I think she usually did comedies, but she's very serious in this.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I can remember her, and just like I feel like I know I've seen her in some random comedy, like from the 2000s, where she plays like the mom of someone or something.
Yeah, I can't remember what the comedy was though.
Yeah, I mean, she's got I think she has like 100 TV credits and like 80 film credits.
Yeah, she's got a lot.
She's got a lot, so she did a lot of work. So then there's a point where Dwayne and Sonny, they like get into a fight over JC.
Because Dwayne finds out Sonny and JC are sleeping together.
Yeah, and he like Dwayne like gives him like a black eye, like totally messes his face up. And that's basically when he decides that, I feel like that's around where Dwayne's like, okay, I'm out of this town. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I'm going to join the military. I'm going to Korea. And that also keeps, so because he got punched in the eye, Sonny can't join the military. So that's, again, it's kind of making him even more stuck. And so then JC and Sonny, they have this whole love affair thing. So you know, she's like, JC decides, okay, I'm gonna try and get with Sonny after, because I know there was at some point the boy Bobby, who she really liked, Bobby gets married.
Yeah.
So she's like, oh shit,
like, well, that didn't work out the way I wanted it to.
Yeah. It didn't work out. So she's like, okay, like I'll get together with JC. And so then they, you know, JC basically, Sonny leaves Ruth hanging to be with JC, which, yeah, that's sucks. And then JC and Sonny decide, oh, let's get eloped in Oklahoma. Yeah, and so then they're like driving to Oklahoma. They're like driving, and then they're like going to Lake Tacoma for their honeymoon, and they're like all happy. And then the police stop them. They're like, well, you know, someone's looking for JC, so we don't know if, you know, we can't have you guys leave. Basically, we can't have you leave the state. We have to go back to Texas.
Yeah. And he's like, how'd they find out? And she's like, well, I had to leave a note for my parents to let them know where I was.
Yeah, so she basically like undermined the whole plan, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's kind of obvious she wasn't really like into him, which is, again, unfortunate thing for Sonny, because he's like, you know, he's like been infatuated with her from like the jump in this movie, and he kind of like dumped the sure thing. I don't know if their relationship would actually work out with Sonny and Ruth. Yeah. But at least she's nice to him. She's like super nice to him. Yeah, you know. But yeah, and he messed that whole thing up. And their marriage is annulled. Over.
Which JC's mom is even telling him, be glad you didn't end up stuck with her. You have had a miserable life. And then JC's mom says, I wasn't able to be with the guy I wanted to be with because my parents wanted me to be with whoever JC's father was. Yeah. And you find out she's talking about Sam the Lion. This whole time she's been in love with him. And she was the woman he went skinny dipping with and everything.
Yeah. And she gave him the nickname. And yeah, she wanted to be with him. And yeah, it's such an interesting like part of the film, because like, you know, he died of the stroke. And yeah, there was also that funeral for him was like a very nice scene, because it was like, you know, basically everyone in the town was there. But the context of like what this person meant to all these different people became like very different at the end of the film, once we understand that. Yeah, and like that stuff feels like a lot of thematically what this film's about is like, you know, the different paths people can take. with their life,
Yeah.
and you know where it can take you, and like what is happiness, I guess, in a way. What's like the thing that can actually make you happy, the choice that makes you happy. So yeah,
And
really
the film
interesting.
ends with a scene with Ruth, and she's just like yelling at Sonny, saying, "I knew you wouldn't stay with me. I'm ugly. You would never be with someone that's as ugly as I am. But you could have at least talked to me about it." And all, like, just a really powerful monologue. But
Yeah, and he didn't even say anything to her. Like he just basically just stopped talking to her, which is a very kind of teenager thing to do.
I mean, she was in her 40s, which is it's creepy.
I mean, yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah,
and again, also like she's still married to
yeah, to
the
Coach
coach.
Popper. Yeah.
Yeah, to Coach Popper, and I forget they have some conversation about the marriage, and she's just like she basically was like, oh yeah, I can't end it, but you know, I can do this fling.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think and like one of the last things that happens before the ending is like Dwayne comes back. He's in the army. He's about to be shipped out to Korea. They go see a film together, which is Red River, this western, which is set in Texas. And you know, then Dwayne sees Sonny off on the bus. I think Dwayne gives Sonny his car. Um, and then Billy, I forget
Oh
who
yeah, that
Billy is related to,
he,
or if he's just like a kid, you know, around town.
I think he's just a kid around town.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, that was a sad scene though.
Oh, that was so sad. Yeah. I mean, Billy, like the whole time, Billy, he's like, I don't think he ever speaks in the movie, right?
No, and they treat him terribly. The
They do.
guys in the group.
They do. Yeah. They treat him because, like, basically they say that he's not totally mentally there.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a scene early on where they like have him lose his virginity with this, like, I guess the one prostitute in town.
Yeah.
Which you know, then what's his name bans all the boys from all the different places in town because of how they treated him. He's at the funeral and he's like wearing a hat. There's this whole thing with the hat, and he's like always wears his hat backwards. He's very nice. You can tell he's a nice soul, but he's you know, just people take him for granted. And Billy gets run over by a car, like a truck runs him over because he's sweeping in the street, and it kills him. And they're all like, oh well, he's so dumb, and he's blah blah blah, and he's this and that, and they're blaming him for getting killed, and they just don't care at all about his life being extinguished. And you know, Sonny's like, dude, he was just sweeping the street, you assholes. And you know, he takes his body, he kind of lays him there, and he kind of covers him.
He takes his jacket off, puts it over his top half, grabs the hat out of the street, puts the hat back on Billy's head, and then walks away, I'm assuming to tell Billy's family. But
yeah, it's super sad. I forget if it was before or after that, but then Sonny's like in the car and he's driving really fast, and it's like close to like a suicide attempt, basically. In a car like that, if you crash, you're going fast enough, you're probably dead. But yeah, he decides not to do it, and then he comes to Ruth, and Ruth kind of, you know, I guess consoles him. Yeah, and like you said, there's that great monologue from her, and then that's kind of the end of the film. Very bittersweet ending, but like kind of like on point for, I feel like, the thematic premise of the film. Yeah, so I guess what were your thoughts about this film, Last Picture Show, and what you felt watching it?
This one was a lot more depressing than Paper Moon. This is not a happy movie. You're not going to feel great after watching this. I thought the performances were brilliant, and you see a lot of actors a lot younger in this film, like Jeff Bridges as Dwayne, Sybil Shepherd. This was one of her first film roles, if not the first. Randy Quaid is also in this briefly.
Yeah, it's funny.
You see a lot of people are more famous now, but back then they weren't, and it's just like it kind of drifts along. The film feels like it's just like slowly drifting along, but you just see these characters' lives and the choices they make play out, and it's hard to describe, but it's not a cheerful movie or anything by any means.
Yeah, it's a really kind of dark coming of age movie, and it's also too about like the way that this town, like I guess because this town is sort of deteriorating. It's like the effect that has on the people of the town, and so they're all either trying to get in or get out or move up. Like that's why JC's always trying to get with that other Bobby or whatever. And I mean, kind of the same with Sonny. Sonny leaves his girlfriend that he's been with for a year because he's trying to move up the ladder, and it just doesn't leave them happy. Right? It doesn't seem to leave them happy at all at the end of this film, which is really interesting. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of a somber story, but it's kind of realistic to like that what happened in a lot of these places during this time period. Because people just left. They just left the towns, and those towns kind of dried up and died. And the Last Picture Show, the name of this film, kind of comes from like when Dwayne and Sonny, and I think it was even Billy was there too. They're watching that movie, and the lady who now owns it is like, I don't know if I can operate this anymore. Because no one's coming to see any movies or anything.
Yeah.
So it's probably going to close. Yeah. Just depressed thinking about this now. Yeah.
Which this movie does have a sequel. I don't think most people know about it because I never knew about it before. Called Texasville, which I'm like, what? And apparently the sequel is in color, which I'm like, it's got everyone in it, the same people. But I'm just never heard of it before, and it seems like it's a total shift from Last Picture Show, at least with the way it's filmed, and it focuses, I think, mostly on Dwayne and JC. I'm like, how have I never heard of the fact that the Last Picture Show has a sequel, and why is it called Texasville?
Yeah. I mean, there's some very interesting names of towns in this movie that I've never heard of.
I think this sequel takes place in Anne Arene as well.
Okay.
It's just called Texasville for some reason. Yeah,
I mean, I'm kind of curious. I mean, it feels like the purpose would be like to catch us up and then to maybe have a happy ending to this whole story.
Yeah, because everyone returns and they're playing their characters, but it's several years later. Forget how many years goes by.
Yeah.
But everyone's older now in the sequel. I don't think it's streaming anywhere. It's probably a hard to find movie, to be honest, because again, I had never heard of it before.
Yeah. I mean, they probably made a sequel because like this film was successful. Like it made like $30 million on a $1 million budget, so it was a financially successful film. And again, it propelled a lot of careers. Sybil Shepherd, what's his name? You were saying
Jeff Bridges. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, Peter Bogdanovich also directs the sequel, so he's returning for it, or he returned for it.
Yeah, interesting. I might try to give that a watch at some point to see how these character stories end.
I'm curious to see how they end as well.
Yeah. So yeah, any final parting thoughts on this film, or just Peter Bogdanovich in general?
I do want to check out some more of his films, so if you have any recommendations, feel free to give them to me. I thought these are both beautifully shot, beautifully directed. The stories and the atmosphere are both very different from each other, but Peter Bogdanovich just seems to naturally have a grasp on them, and he makes the audience feel things.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the acting is always excellent in all these films. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks again, Alyssa. Everyone should check her out on the other socials. A lot of good stuff there. And yeah, thanks a lot, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Bye.